Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, we're so excited to see you again today. Thank you so much for joining us for our November Summit month. We're focusing on supporting veterans, active service members, and military spouses for this month's summit. Now, I am thrilled to moderate our next conversation entitled Operation Career Launch, Finding Your Next Career with AJ Ashley, a veteran and talent acquisition leader with Service to Software, somebody who knows firsthand how to translate military experience into corporate success. Now, as a veteran himself, AJ has spent the last 15 years building a career leading recruiting efforts across industries, specializing in connecting high performing talent with organizations that value leadership, resilience, and mission driven work ethics. AJ, I'm so excited to welcome you to the stage and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be invited to come and speak.
All right, now before we start diving into our questions today, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Would you let all of our audience members know, what your military background is and what ties you to the material today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in the Army for a little over 13 years as an infantryman. I got selected to be a recruiter and then medically retired. I've been out for 12 years. I have to do the math. And I've been out for 12 years. I've been in talent acquisition and recruiting since. Currently, I am the director of recruiting for Service to Software. We are a nonprofit third-party skill bridge that helps transitioning veterans through the skill bridge program find opportunities with our partner companies.
Excellent. Love to hear it. All right. Now, obviously, you have successfully transitioned from military service into a role in the private sector. Can we talk about some of the biggest mindset shifts or lessons that helped you to navigate that change? I feel like if you are someone who's not from a military background, you might not understand quite how drastic a shift it can be.
I think the biggest thing you said is a mind shift change. A lot of times in the military, it's a service, and we're sacrificing the me for the we. So it's more of a mind shift of just slowing down a little bit, bracing yourself, right? We feel an intensity to get out and immediately be successful. I need to make a decent living to support my family. And it was through time, I've learned that mind shift had to slow down a little bit and be like, hey, where's somewhere I want to get up and go every day? Where's an environment that I'm going to want to be at and has a purpose? We use the term mission, not quite like we do in the military, but it's a mission, right? What are you doing every day, and why would you want to be going there? And
Mhm.
that was a big shift change, from with our military. I that provided it every day when you put the uniform on, even on bad days, you were like, hey, I I did a service today. I served my country, and now post that in my military career, I've learned that finding the right environment is really important.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be very easy, depending on what you were doing prior, to feel like kind of almost every other job is a bit of a letdown, depending on where, like, again, depending on where you were and what you were doing. It's very easy to go from what I do matters every day, and you can see the results of that, to, any number of jobs where you're basically looking at a spreadsheet or, something that's far less tangential or tangible. So I think that is really a huge thing that shouldn't be overlooked, right? I mean, that you're completely changing not just the setting in which you live and work, but you are moving from one framework where there are certain goals that are already identified and into something that is total chaos from, comparatively speaking.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. It's interesting. I got medically retired and I went through a med board for about 2 years. So I knew I was getting out. And even after getting out and having a or post-military career, excuse me, I had a civilian doctor once that just randomly was like, hey, so what was it like for you to process when you transitioned out? And I had been out for about 5 years at the time. And it was like, I don't know if I ever really had. Like, you know, you're no longer that person. It's all, which is fine, great. It's time to another chapter in your life, but just being like, whoa, hey, that guy, like, hey, that period's gone. I am who I am now.
Mhm. I think you made a really good point, which is like you had years knowing that you were going to get out. And not everybody does. Some people are, something happens and they have to be discharged quickly. Like there's all kinds of other things that can go into it. But you're right. I mean, like you can be going through that process of years and still not really process internally like the shift that you're about to take until it's either too late or it's already happening. Yeah, I like that. Okay. Now, one of the things that's a really common question that we talk about here is how veterans struggle to translate their military experience into civilian terms. We just do not understand the acronyms, the word salad, all of that stuff. Oftentimes, this comes down to the very terminology that organizations might be using, and corporate world has enough, more than enough acronyms and all of its own thing. What practical advice do you have for making sure that you are giving clear translations to your hiring managers or to the people that you are trying to interview with?
That's a great question. So from the veteran side, right, and those that are working on the resume, my easy answer is, hey, Google it, right? If you're looking at a job description and there's terms and things that you don't understand, Google what that means, you know, break that down and understand the importance of it. Typically, the more something is listed in a job, the higher importance it has. So we may have a different software in the military that they use in the civilian world, but if it's applicable, and you can say, hey, I didn't use this particular software program, but I am familiar with this, and they're similar. You can mention that in your resume and dive into that. I think that's very important. So a lot of Googling, but also putting yourself, I'm always, hey, be mindful. It's easy for us to think from a veteran mind stamp. I think of someone who doesn't know. I remember going through a class one time and somebody was like, their resume said M203. And I was like, there's people in the army that don't know what an M203 is. I was like, but there's definitely people in the civilian world who don't. So just you want to market yourself in the best way possible. So take your time and go through that. And then on the hiring manager, the corporate, the team, that team side, the beauty is almost everyone is very motivated and eager to hire veterans. So they want to make sure that they're understanding those resumes and what that means. And I think the best success that I've had in the past with recruiting teams is using the individual recruiters that you have, whether it's on the recruiting TA, talent acquisition teams within HR, identifying those, volunteering, saying, hey, whenever you have a resume, whether it's on the recruiting team, the hiring manager team, reach out to one of us. We can help translate that, but also just always constantly educating hiring managers as much as you can, putting training programs together for those hiring managers um, to teach them on what things they need to be looking for and understanding what's on a resume.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we talked about this. I recorded another one of these yesterday, so I got to talk to a panel of gentlemen who had also exited military service for civilian life. And a lot of the things that we talked about when we talked about this translation is it kind of goes hand in hand with the mindset shift where you're leaving a situation honestly, it's more of a lifestyle. You're leaving this lifestyle where you knew certain things, you knew how to communicate those things to everyone else around you. And there was all of this kind of jargon and shorthand and stuff in place. And as we were talking it through, the guys were like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. If let's say you're trying to explain to a hiring manager that you were in charge of a platoon. I don't know what platoon means. Platoon could be like 4 guys, it could be like 400 guys. I don't know. But
Or an
he was like, oh,
Oscar-winning
yeah,
movie
so
starring Charlie Sheen.
exactly. But that's the thing. He was like, yeah, so a platoon is like, I managed a team of like 8 to 10 people. And I'm like, oh, okay, perfect. Boom, right there. I
Yeah.
automatically like understand, have more context. And so like it can be as simple as instead of saying I managed a platoon, I managed a team of certain, X people.
Numbers and dollars. I tell veterans all the time that the beauty of the military is it is not run like a business. But in the civilian world, everything else, even in defense contracting, it's all numbers and all run like business. So tell me how many people you managed, how much was that? What was the value of that? And then also tell me what you did to improve that. That's great that you managed 8 people, but how did you improve? Did their PT scores rise? Did their were they more accountable? Did you achieve goals? Did you overperform in metrics? That's what recruiters, hiring managers, companies are looking for because it's business. How can you make us more effective and efficient in what we're doing?
Absolutely. Um, all right. Now, one of the things that I do think is kind of important to touch on here is kind of that practical advice for translation. So, can you think of any resumes that you've seen recently where you're like, yeah, that we've got to change this specific instance?
The biggest key to remember when you are looking at building out and submitting a resume is that recruiters maybe are looking at for 7 seconds. So number one, right off the bat, I need that resume to be aesthetically pleasing. Like I don't need, make it look like it was put together with a super duper marketing project, but a simple resume that's easy to flow is pretty easy. But exactly what you talked about, where if there's numbers that stand out in there that I can easily look at and be like, managed 8 to 10 people, increase these things, their PT scores, their weapon qualifications, led soldiers to Soldier of the Month boards, or any kind of things like that that will make you stick out over everyone else. And then another simple one is if there are things in a job description, Excel experience, Microsoft Office knowledge, depending on the job, like when you can find those particular things, oftentimes talent acquisition hiring managers at companies are looking for that.
Yeah.
And then also know a difference between when you're looking at a job. Preferred means that, let's say that says bachelor's preferred, you don't have to have a bachelor's. Where if it
Mhm.
says required, hey, and you don't have one, that is required for that job. You could be an amazing candidate, but based off of that, they're not able to move forward. It's required for the job.
Yeah. I think that's a good one. All right. In your experience, what qualities or skills do you see employers most valuing in veterans today? And how can job seekers highlight those strengths when they are going to apply?
That's a great. So right off the bat, if you look at it, veterans are typically outperform and stay longer than their civilian counterparts when they get hired at a job. So right there, I think that shows the mission drivenness and the determination of veterans. So, um, not to sound like a broken record, but if you can, I want to see in your resume, because again, it's about business. How are you going to increase the whatever that we are doing? How are you going to outperform the other applicants that are applying for this job? And how are you going to exceed standards? So again, if you can put things in there that, awards that you've won or things that you did or soldiers or excuse me, service members that you've led, what they did and how they stood out above others or helped you achieve the mission more effectively.
Yeah, I like that. Something we talked about a couple weeks ago was this idea of leadership and how, obviously most people in the military are empowered to be leaders because there will be times that chain of command just means that, well, you're in charge now. When it comes to kind of more intangibles like leadership, are there other skills that you think people should think back on their military service and kind of look for examples of that, apart from leadership, since we know that that one is very highly prized?
Right. I think the leadership is beautiful and I think it's well known in the civilian world, but I think also being able to highlight our ability to accomplish a mission, right, with minimal supervision. So that is part of leadership, but I think also, that goal oriented team environment, right? That, hey, I don't, you're going to be able to give me a task and I can get it done. I won't need as much supervision. Again, it goes back to the trainability, coachability of our veteran, uh, transitioning veterans in the workforce now. So
I like that. That's a good one. Okay. Now we all know that networking and mentorship can often play a very big role in success post-service as well as, within. How can veterans build a meaningful professional network, especially if they are starting from scratch? I know my husband faced this a lot when he first got out of the army, where he'd been in this world, he knew all of these people, and then once he left, he didn't have any more of those connections because he wasn't going into civilian service. So what do you recommend to people if they are getting out and realizing like their network is entirely military?
that's a great question, right? And I hear this a lot because I talk to veterans every day, and they're like, "Well, in the military, it's all about who you know," and I'm like, "You have no idea." It's even more in the civilian world, especially as technology and things improve. Like it's even harder and harder to get in front of someone. So you building the network is going to be a key part of anyone's transition and future opportunities. And I know they hear it all the time. It's going to be things like LinkedIn, right? Not just connecting with people individually on LinkedIn, but building your brand through it. Making sure that you have a really sharp and impressive LinkedIn profile. Just like we talked about with the resume, I need tangible things. I need things that I can see in there and say, Meg, when she was in this position, increased efficiency. Look, they went up 20% in this or decreased 30% in this. Like I can see those things right away. If you're in that transition, keep that open to work on your profile. If you're looking for something, you get seen 80% of the time more with that. Um, and also the groups. A lot of people think about individual connections. Those are great, but they have transitioning groups on within LinkedIn that you can join. Feel free to reach out to people that are within companies. You're in a unique opportunity while you're transitioning. You're still in the military, so you're building that brand, but you can connect people that work with the company. Hey, tell me what you like about working there. Getting their response to on paper, maybe that place is somewhere you want to be, but you want to engage people and get to know them really well to find out if it is the place you do want to network and eventually get your foot in the door.
And I think it's really important when we're talking about, networking and mentorship and building your network. You don't just have to go after, people who are, for lack of a better term, like above you, who are maybe further along in the industry. You can network with other people who are job hunting same as you. It yes, who you know is absolutely important, but a lot of times it's who knows those other people. So like,
Who
are you
who
the
knows
kind
you is how I look at it. I always say I'm like,
exactly.
okay, who knows you? Well, I know this guy. Okay, but that's great. But does people inside his organization there know you and what you do? Well, no. Well, you know why they don't know? It's not on your LinkedIn.
I like that. So when you first got out, was LinkedIn as much of a tool that you were using, or did you have other alternatives that you used to build your network?
I thought I was doing the right thing. I was friending everybody, getting connected with everybody on LinkedIn. So it was fairly new, but it's definitely not like it is now, where I think I have close to 22,000 connections on LinkedIn. But so obviously it's grown a lot and it's become a great tool. But no, it wasn't as much. I did everything I could. SkillBridge wasn't a thing, but I went to as many um, fairs and events that I went to. I worked through the Wounded Warriors to Work project. I approached it every day, and I hope other veterans that are transitioning do. Like while I was still in uniform, I was approaching. While I do not have a job, my job is to find a job. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to look at it. And I like the idea too of like, going to job fairs, going like there's so much stuff that happens. Like, my job is entirely online. But there's a lot of stuff, things that do happen in person that can be very, very valuable to try and make those connections too. So I really appreciate that.
like you mentioned before, um, I may go somewhere and something may not work for me, but I can bring it back to Meg or vice versa, right? Like, hey, I learned about this, not necessarily what I'm looking for, but I know you and I know your personality might fit there. Uh, and that's building your brand everywhere. And that doesn't mean excluding people that are also getting out. You're not in competition with them per se, as much as you are that's still your brother or your sister in uniform, and maintaining that network can help as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because not everybody's going to be in forever. They might transition out eventually as well. And even if because here's the thing, you're building connections for yourself, but you also might be the person that your buddies call later saying like, hey, how did you do blah, 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 blah. Can you introduce me to XYZ person at your company? So I think that's good. Now, the private sector can feel very unfamiliar and very unstructured after years of structured service. What do you recommend to veterans to stay resilient and confident, especially during periods of uncertainty like we've been living in for the last several years?
Right. To know that they're not alone in that. Um, the numbers show that over 60% of veterans feel underemployed when they get out, sometimes up to years. But then if you Google, that sounds like a lot, but then if you Google it, over 70% of civilians feel like they're underutilized in their job. So like you're not alone in that. Um, so don't give up, right? I'm assuming in the military, maybe not necessarily worse, but we've faced a lot and, we've gone through worse. So the only way it's going to get better is not giving up. But also, if you get that opportunity, and this is why I coach veterans all the time that know they're getting out, like start as early as you can and building those networks and getting to know people. Look at the website, right? Everyone is veteran friendly. Everybody wants to hire veterans. Everyone knows the numbers and that veterans stay longer, they outperform all these things, they get promoted typically faster. But is that a culture that is veteran ready? Do they have a support group? Do they have mentorships? right? Because if you're lucky enough, and I'm just using myself because of this conversation, if you have an AJ who's transitioned 12 years ago and went through that and was like, where is the organization? Like I am in a totally different world, and you can come to me, we can grab coffee once a week or every day if we need to, and you can vent and be like, AJ, what in the world is going on? I didn't have that. Like I just had to go every day and be like, they told us to be here at
Well,
eight
this is
o'clock.
weird, but I guess it's normal. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like, and just not, filling out a place, all those things. So if you can find an organization, if you look at their website and they have a place specifically for military or veterans, if you go on their website and they have an ERG, do they have programs and things, mentorship in place already? Not saying other places wouldn't be good for you, but like just know that place, that transition might be a little bit softer of a landing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. What tips would you give to allies or companies who want to be better about uplifting veterans and military spouses? Because this is, if you are not within that world or you don't know anybody within that world, it is very easy to be completely blind to all the things you do not know and do not understand.
I have said this since I got out, right? There's an entire pipeline of people that are looking for work, veterans. There's all kinds of companies that want to hire veterans. I'm like, why like it should just go together, right? I don't understand why it doesn't. Similar on the veteran side, like it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world for these companies. So, right, first and foremost, I know it's a challenge. There's a lot of HR things that you have to go through and legalities, but if you can get the veterans that you already have on that team bought in, motivated, and engaged, there it's organically going to grow, right? And maybe if you already have a great environment for those veterans and they're motivated, that may be simple. Sometimes it's not as simple, but you can start with small gestures, including them, maybe doing things on Veterans Day or acknowledging them, social media posts, encouraging those that are willing to self-identify to encourage those that are looking to self-identify, and it kind of becomes a snowball. Next thing you know, you have that website we just mentioned where you can go on there and you have testimonies from vets that are there that are eager and explain why this place works. Using that, those that you already have in place, I think are the is a great place to get started. Um, Maybe it's biweekly meetings with HR from elected veteran representatives, things like that encourage those veterans to want to be proud of being a veteran, but also where they're working and growing that organic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to highlight here, like ask the questions of the people who are you already have in your organization and then listen to the answers. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, and we're going to do things for Veterans Day, and there's going to be a social media post and a t-shirt you have to wear and a pizza party, and we're doing this and this and that. And it's like, okay, they really would have just liked like a pizza. They don't want to be necessarily trotted out like ponies. Like ask, you know what I mean? Like ask, because there might be some people that very much want the recognition, and there might be others that are like, I could just go with like, great job, here's a cookie, you know? So I think that is really important to like ask the question and then listen to what the response is. Because what those people might need to feel welcome could be completely different than what you would think as somebody who's very much outside of that demographic.
Exactly. And I think, again, going back to in this phone world, it's all business. It's going to take time, right? If we haven't established something, it's going to take time to even get that rolling. But if we already have something, anytime, it doesn't matter if we're talking about this program or any other program, it's going to take time. It's going to take buy-in. Don't give up. Like I've seen it. I've grown it at other organizations, and it's beautiful when it takes off and it becomes a pride thing. And then next thing you know, these conversations are a lot simpler. And now we're talking about how to advance it more because again, it happens organically and it becomes a place where veterans want to come and work.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, if these are conversations that seem like awkward or, weird to have, that's okay. You can push through the weirdness of like, yeah, we haven't recognized our veterans before. I don't know what to do from there. That's okay. That's perfectly fine to have as a jumping off point and then say, all right, well, now that we have people here that we want to represent, we want to do better. So I think that's lovely. Okay. I want to ask, I've got a couple more questions before we run out of time, but I want to ask if you have one piece of advice to give service members who are about to begin their career transition, what would it be?
Man, that's if I had to limit it to one, I would say
It's a big question.
right, right. Because well, there's we talked about like don't give up. Hey, if you look 60%, that means if you and I both were transitioning at the same time, more than likely both of us are going to feel, it probably takes three of us so just keep that in the mind. And before you know it, you're somewhere. But I would say doing your research, getting engaging, networking. On paper, somebody might feel like a great environment and a culture, but that really matters when you get out and you're going to the same place every day. And as we mentioned, that mission kind of part is gone and that fulfillment is gone. You're going to be once you want to be somewhere that you're happy, um, and you feel included. And that's why I say sometimes you have those places you go on there and they have those all those resources and things. If you can find a place like that, it makes it great. And maybe you're a go getter and you're a leader that you can go to a place that doesn't quite have that yet, and maybe you could be one that leads that charge.
Yeah. Actually, I think I wanted to touch on this because I had heard this at a recording the other day that I thought was really interesting. We were discussing the differences between civilian and military, just kind of what the culture is like, what the feel is like, and the vibe at work. And one person had said that one of their biggest transition kind of realizations was that like asking questions was a good thing. You weren't questioning why you were doing something. You were like asking for clarification. And that was not really a factor in their prior roles in the military. It was like, well, you get given the information that you're given and then you figure out the rest of it. Is there anything similar that you remember from your transition that was like a bit of a culture shock for you?
Yeah, I think right like that. Well, that really was like we're going from where I have to stand a certain type of way when I talk to people, or people have to stand a certain type of way when they're talking to me. Ross aren't, no aren't, yes aren't. That's about it. I don't want to hear anything else about it. So where you're in the civilian world, and people are just like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense," and I'm like, I like just being like, "Whoa, whoa!"
Shut
Like
your
somebody,
face.
like, oh, that person's gonna have to update their resume, like, like so I think that was in that work, like in the military, it doesn't matter what we do, everything is go, 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 go. Like it's got to be done ASAP, and as soon as possible. To where in the civilian world, like you want to ask those questions. And by asking those questions, asking them tactically and appropriately and professionally can help your growth. Like, okay, AJ's engaged, Meg is engaged, she's asking these questions, she wants to make sure she's doing a good job. There's a lot of that can go into that. And it's okay to ask questions that because you don't know. Um, that shows growth, that shows availability, and then understanding you're able to do a better job.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. In the last couple minutes we have you, I do want to bring the conversation back around to service to software. Could you tell us a little bit more about this organization?
Yeah, so we were founded by a former Army officer. David Hester kind of got recruited from some other officers that he served with for a SaaS company, software as a service. And they were able to build it out. And when they had an opportunity to kind of grow the company together, they looked at each other and said, "Hey, it's time to pay it forward and help other veterans." If you look at the numbers, Meg, unfortunately, over 200,000 veterans get out every year. And as much as we all know tech is the future, it's here now, but it's even bigger in the future. Less than 6% of us are able to find tech jobs. So they started Service to Software, S2S, as a nonprofit third party skill bridge. And what we do is we take veterans that are skill bridge eligible, coach them up, train them, develop them, and get them placed with tech companies, typically focused in SaaS, software as a service, through customer facing sales, business, relationship type building roles. They get training through the John Barros and Pavilion platforms. They get placed with a partner company for their skill bridge. Those companies are looking to bring the veteran in through the skill bridge and hire them post skill bridge full time once they leave the service. Over 97% of those that have completed our skill bridge and gone through our program are currently working full time.
That is really good numbers, and I think that's really, really amazing. I love the placement. I love, this seems like a really good kind of transition from that all-inclusive, very scripted and structured, like military life into moving into
Veterans do
civilian
very
life.
well in something like that. And what I love about it as well, like two things. Obviously, number one, right off the bat, when they pulled me in, I was like, "Hey, I'm working with other veterans, and I can help their transition be a little bit more smooth than mine." Great, but the tech piece, but as a veteran who has found I love the metrics piece, like the mission. Every day I get up and I'm like, all right, I've got to knock this, and this out, and that, down the line is going to be my success. But I think veterans do really well in those driven metrics focused roles.
Yeah, absolutely agree. All right, AJ, this has been really wonderful. If people want to learn more or follow up or get in touch with Service to Software, what do they need to know?
Our website is service and then the number two software.org, and then or com, excuse me, and then you can reach me at AJ at service2software.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much, AJ. This has been really wonderful. Thank you so much for spending time with our community today and sharing your expertise with us in addition to your time. It is very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, I appreciate the opportunity.